I'm not sure if we're going to have a meeting. There's no thing on the agenda.
Easy enough.
We will see if anyone joins.
Good morning.
Hey, Rian, you're really quiet.
I am. Let me see if I can
That's better.
turn my. Is that better? Let me turn myself up a little. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Did you conquer some mountains over the holidays, Eddie?
No, I actually didn't do anything at all, and it was amazing.
I spent the last week of last year and the first week of this year to relocate. So I'm living here now. That's my background is where I live. That's cool.
Wait, did you move yet or no?
Yes, I moved in the beginning of last week. We
That's awesome.
So I'm like 300 meters off the beach. So yeah, it's sun is setting now, but it was a lovely sunny day. Spent the afternoon outside. So yeah, it's great. Good for mental health. I think it's going to be a good year of new rhythms.
That's awesome. How far are you from the II office now?
It's still 12,000 kilometers. I'm still in South Africa.
Oh, I thought you moved to New Zealand by now. Okay.
No, that didn't happen. No, I just moved to the coast in South Africa. So this is my South African coast. And now I'm busy inviting everybody that says, I want to go to South Africa. And my answer is yes, I have an agenda. This is how you do it. Fly here. So I've got a whole schedule. So anybody interested, come visit me. I'll show you around and tell you what to do after you leave from my house. So, and surprising amount of people says, oh, South Africa is so high on my bucket list. So then come, you know somebody now. Amen.
I was just replying to that guy, Ben. I'm glad you got it.
Oh, the one about when the meeting is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I also directly replied to him and send him the link to the agenda.
Ooh, the web client's lagging pretty bad. Forgot I switched personal machines and I don't have Zoom installed on the new one, and the old one, the battery is dead, and we can't install the Zoom client at work. So using the horrible web client today.
Do you have the Slack client installed, or are you using the web client for that too?
I'm also using the web client just because it works fine for me. I think the Zoom client specifically, there were like security concerns.
Hello, are we waiting for something? Or did the meeting start?
I don't think we had an agenda ahead of time. Looking at the doc. But since folks are here, if someone has a topic. Or we can just say Happy New Year.
Arno, did you want to talk about the migration stuff at all, or no?
Are we ready to have that conversation?
I think we should start brainstorming how to have that conversation.
Which migration stuff?
Yeah, that's the first question. I think what Edin trying to say is we want at some point to have a conversation about cloud migration. I think that's one thing we really need to think about this year.
Mm.
I mean, last year we just make a point about running pro inside the community.
Yeah.
And use build cluster inside. Use the build cluster. So we have now two control plane against the same build cluster. This is done. Now we need to think about migration from Google to the community infrastructure.
So I don't know when the last like SIG Kate's info meeting was, but I actually had a meeting yesterday with Tim about this topic. And the gist of what I got was that we need to control spend first. Our spend is out of control. And we are not going to be able to keep moving things until we rethink
that's
costs on
one.
the existing spend.
Yeah, that's one point. Okay, I'm gonna redefine context here. So the artifact distribution right now, and specifically the containers built by the community, it use half of the budget right now. That's a problem. So we can solve that in 120, 125 by end of 125. But there's a lot of factors we need to consider about this. And after that, we still need to think about pro migration.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and suggest though, like we should totally look at cloud migration, but after discussing with him, and I may actually work on this, I don't think we're going to have it mitigated quickly. I think if we introduce some different artifact hosting or something, it's going to take a long time to actually get everyone that's consuming to move over. And I think it could be a good while before we've kind of actually reined in the spend on the existing stuff, just because of the delay from when we implement something to when it actually pays off.
I don't know what conversation you had with Tim, so let's have this conversation in Kate's in front. So,
I'm planning to follow up. We were just discussing that, like potentially, Google is looking at staffing that problem.
okay.
So Tim was getting me up to speed on what has been happening in Kate's Infra because I haven't been there in a little while. That's my on that is that I would suspect that we probably actually, I think is probably actually a feature at the moment that most of the spend is on the like essentially unmetered billing account.
Yes.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we can migrate all of the jobs to the community-owned cluster and still run them on the Google worker nodes, right?
I don't think we can. I mean, like technically it's maybe feasible. I think policy isn't. Like one thing that we have is like I don't know how much I talk about this, but one of the things is we have pretty heavily locked down the ability to like export service account keys. That's like a legacy feature inside Google at this point. So it's increasingly challenging to have like new control over the old projects. Would need to talk to our team, but I think
we already have that in place actually, where the jobs are being kicked off from the community cluster and the work is being done on the other cluster.
I would be very curious to see that. I don't think that's the case. I think that the main build cluster is only run by the existing Prow Services cluster, which is running inside Google.
Eddie, I think Benjamin talk about the Google Grid cluster, not the one inside the community infrastructure.
Right, which is where most of the jobs are now. So we could like, there's nothing. I think a couple of GCS buckets are like blockers for moving certain like build jobs over. We already have moved things like Kubernetes pre-submits. I don't think there's a lot blocking moving more stuff. But Prow is structured such that you really only want one service cluster handling like pre-submits and so on for a repo. The things that actually interact directly with the repo as opposed to like periodic jobs. So the Google Services cluster is executing jobs in a community build cluster in preparation for migration. But because a couple of things like build have been blocked on that being trickier to move, we don't have all the pre-submits moved. So we also had to move the services cluster because you kind of want to like, you want to cut over the services cluster at once. You don't want to have mixed. You can have mixed build clusters or like mixed CI jobs or something between them. That's fine. Last I saw, the problem was the jobs that push builds, those buckets, it's really, you can't just like move a bucket between projects and there's things live consuming them. So I don't know where we wound up on that effort, but I think those dominoes are how we're at the state where we have some stuff moved to scheduling in a community cluster, but it's being scheduled by the Google Services cluster. I think we also have a community cluster scheduling to a community cluster.
I gotta dig back in because I really thought that we had the community cluster was able to kick up jobs and the compute was done on the Google owned cluster. And for context, the reason I'm bringing this up is because when Arnaud and I talked about it, we want the SIG, Arnaud wants the SIGs to be responsible for moving their own Proud jobs. And that's going to be a really, really long process. That's going to lead a lot of hand-holding and shepherding. And the sooner we can kick that off, the better.
Yeah, but I think we expected also the bigger gains to be from moving the compute cluster. I mean, it has cost, which is a problem for us right now, but that allows you to like access and debug the actual execution environment. Whereas like what code is running in the services cluster and how it's configured is already auto deployed from test infra. And we are like, except for one or two, except for a small group of people that need to actually keep the Prow running, we don't want to be granting like every SIG access to the actual services cluster because that has like God keys over everything. But then we're back to like the execution cluster is where all of the cost is. So I don't know. My assumption right now is that as long of a process as that going to be, we're going to have to pump the brakes for a while until we can figure out the budget. So I intend to work on the budget problem, it looks like, but I am pretty skeptical that we're going to resolve that quickly. I think we can probably get like an attempt at what that will look like ship relatively quickly, but having it really take effect is going to take a while. For example, I believe most of the cost is coming from the Docker images, and those right now people are downloading from a domain owned by like the GCR team. Even if we had something else that could rework that, it is going to be a very interesting conversation to consider trying to move that domain over once we have something. I'm not sure that's even allowable. I'm gonna have to dig more into the policies. And if it's not, then we're gonna have to get all the clients to move to some new endpoint, which I think we want to do anyhow. I'm not sure the history behind that, but I mean, I think we have Kates.io. We should move people to using Kates.io to indirect all of the community things, which should include artifacts. But given how GCR.io Google containers to Kates.gcr.io went, that's going to take like 6 months, a year or more to see any substantial shift in consumption. People are usually shipping stable releases a couple versions back.
I think the simple approach is basically to set up a new proxy and have the endpoint for the proxy
Right.
replacing kgci.io, and we can easily shift the
Yeah, the
traffic.
problem is going to the team that owns that domain and saying, I want to point this at something that isn't a Google property. I'm not
think
sure that's going
Aaron,
to be accepted. Tim
Aaron is
seems to think
supposed
that's
to have
pretty
a
easy.
meeting with them.
Aaron is out for the moment.
Yeah,
Possibly a
but
while.
okay, for context, we reached out someone inside the GCR team.
Mhm.
I think it was in December, and that person set up a meeting with technical lead of GCR and Aaron. It was supposed to happen this month, so I don't know when Aaron will be back. And but at some point, we need to have a conversation with the GCR team.
Right, we are, but talking to Tim about it, I wouldn't. I think it's possible. I wouldn't place bets on that happening.
Okay.
It's definitely going to look like a questionable move from like a policy perspective. I'm not sure if we can get that or not. And Tim and I both think it seems probably unlikely. We're definitely going to ask, but it's going to be difficult to ask before we have something more concrete on like what does that look like.
Okay.
So it's possible if we can ship something that works and get it up and running and then manage to redirect the existing domain that we could cut traffic at that point. But I think we're also going to want to be really careful doing some kind of cutover like that on a very production endpoint that tons of clusters depend on. I don't expect this is going to be super soon that's done. And I think there's a very, very real possibility that Kates.gcr.io gets kind of just deprecated in place like we did with Google containers, and that we have to get clients to cut over to the new thing. And I think that if we have to go that route, it's going to take even longer. So, yeah, I don't know if there's other possibilities. Like maybe we can just increase the budget. It sounds like that's probably not going to happen. I think Tim's had enough friction on the existing one. I'll need to, I don't know, you probably know that data than me. I was getting this through Tim on if there's like anywhere else that we can try to reduce. It sounds to me like, artifact hosting is dominating at the moment.
Is the only cost burden we have right now. So
Yeah. Well, I
I'm
technically have a few
sure.
other things migrated, but they're pretty small, right?
Yeah. Not exactly, because we migrate the SIG scalability jobs. So
Right.
it's really costly right now.
Suppose we could migrate them back.
No. No. I mean,
you might-
I mean, at some point it can be an option, but we really need to discuss about what we can do about basically
yeah,
case.gcr.io, because I feel like build a new proxy and request the GCR team to use this new endpoint so we can shift the traffic and have some kind of CDN in front of
yeah.
that.
I said I suspect that there are reasons that you can't do that on a like official Google domain.
Okay.
But we'll we'll see. Um, I've worked a little bit with domains at Google before because of Prow instances, and in the past the like rules around that were like really strict. So we'll see. We're definitely going to ask. But I don't think we don't have like direct ownership over that, and like if I were if I were that team on the other side, I would not be thrilled to like basically run a proxy pointing at something we don't control on our like official domain.
Well, I mean, this is a security perspective, but if we can prove we are trusty, we can be trusted to run that
Sure.
endpoint.
But even then, I think it's going to take a while before we have the serving infrastructure in place and mirrors and things. I mean, given that we've literally been talking about this possibility since the first meeting when Tim announced that we had the credits, and as far as I know, there hasn't been any major progress.
Okay.
I would expect, hopefully, tentatively, assuming that I'm going to work on this, I imagine we can get something up and running this quarter that like looks about right. But I wouldn't be surprised if it takes at least another quarter to like start really using it. And then I don't know how long until we can get all the client load shifted. So I think this is sort of like probably the main thing we're going to be doing this year for migrating, right? Until that's done. And I wouldn't bet on it being a quick exercise.
Well, the plan for us on Kitchen First side was having the proxy up and running these milestones and move all the tests over the new endpoint, the next milestone. So we trying to basically save the. We have some kind of traffic we can shift.
But proxy to what? Like we need to have the thing that we're pointing it at. That doesn't exist yet either.
Well, I mean, we need to build something from scratch, but
right. That's going to take a little bit, right?
Not really, because it's already done. Is something already done?
I look, or if you're talking about the artifact server in K-Info, that doesn't do what we need yet.
No, a proxy in front of GCR.
Oh, well, just a proxy to our new thing isn't a big problem. We need something that actually intelligently splits the load on the image contents.
So the II folks have been prototyping this for a bit. They have a different couple implementations, and most of them were built around source ARN. So based on whatever cloud provider it was coming from, it could redirect the traffic.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need to do an intelligent redirection, because if you have a CDN in front of that, the CDN will do that for you.
Okay, but we don't have a CDN.
We have a CDN as a service inside the organization we run right now. We just have to enable the CDN in front of a proxy, and the CDN will basically distribute the traffic for you, and it will cache the traffic.
Interesting. Well, we'll have to follow up more about this, but I suspect it's going to take a while. In the meantime, I don't know. I mean, other possibilities are that we could spin up we could spin up like a compute cluster on another provider.
The thing is, for if you want to basically use that, for example, Amazon, we're talking about area about this. Amazon has what they call a public container registry, and we just need to push that to this container registry. But we need to request funding for that. At the moment we push to that, we certify the registry, we push artifact on this new registry inside Amazon, Amazon client can consume that registry.
Uh-huh.
And the good thing is Amazon will take care of traffic distribution over the different region.
So yeah, we've been talking about this for a bit, and I was talking to Tim about it as well. There's still a lot of policy that we need to figure out in terms of who owns that account. Do we do this on the CNCF's AWS account? Do we stand up? Right, because I said before, like I can easily stand up an employee-owned account inside AWS. It is free 99 as far as like the project is concerned, and like it is a placeholder until we get things figured out. But then that's not how things work out, and then we'll be in the same boat we are now with the Google-owned GCP accounts, and it's just we need to figure out like and do it right the first time.
Yeah, it's a real pain to move those two because then Eddie moves on and then no one knows like how is this set up and who owns this and like which projects even exist. Just inventorying them is a nightmare as they proliferate.
I think we should stop discuss about this because Linus is on the call and he had a subject.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to like interrupt the discussion, but I don't even know if this is the right forum, but yeah, I already sent out an email yesterday on a couple mailing lists for this group and also for dev at Kubernetes.io. Basically, TLDR is that I want to work on improving the proud documentation, basically in the style of what Kind has done with like statically generated docs because it just looks really nice. I just think Proud deserves one too. I haven't heard any big like we shouldn't do this type of comments yet. So it sounds like it will probably happen. But yeah, please feel free to leave notes in the doc. I've shared it with those groups. So if you have access to those mailing lists, you should be able to comment on them. Or in the GitHub issue if that's an issue. Yeah, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Linus. Also, sorry. Normally we would have these in like items time boxed, but they're also ordinarily for meetings throughout the rest of the year. We'll ask that there is a meeting to cut off time on the community calendar for adding agenda items the day before, so we know what we're getting into. But
right, yeah,
didn't happen this year, so we'll try to start better on the next meeting. Sorry about that. And thank you. That
no
sounds
worries.
great. I'm a huge proponent of those. We had to do quite a bit of figuring out for like how was that allowable. When we did the Kind one, there was only the Kubernetes.io one, and we didn't have a pattern for this. But I think a number of repos have done this now, and there's a pretty straightforward like process to get one of these sites up and running, and they're really nice to have.
Actually, are there docs for that process already that you know of, or is?
It's been a while. I'm having difficulty recalling, but I can we can follow up offline, and I can put you in touch with some folks that help
Great.
run that.
Okay.
I think you can ping
Basically, the
Contrabacks.
SIG docs runs all the like static site, like the account, and then the rest is Ktempo for the domains.
Right.
I would just want to add a clarification. Basically, you need to, if you want to use Netlify, you need to talk to SIG Contrabacks about this because they are the one admin of the Kubernetes Netlify account.
Okay.
Interesting. Did that change?
Kind of, because on the Ktempo side, we just update the DNS and try to the Netlify endpoint. That's just it. But the rest is owned by Contrabacks.
Previously, the SIG docs leads ran the Netlify.
It's between SIG docs and Contrabacks, but most of the time it's basically Contrabacks doing the work for any new trip. I do have a question about pro documentation. So I know I saw an issue about split the pro code base to a separate repo. Can we basically use that to address the two problems in the same time?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, I saw an issue, I think last year, about split the pro code base to
Oh,
different people.
okay. I mean, are you suggesting that we try to split the code base at the same time?
Yeah, so it can be
I mean,
easier.
I wish I could, but that sounds like a really hard problem.
Okay.
I mean, not technically difficult, but just, you know, all the strings that are attached. Um, you know, yeah, I haven't discussed that idea, but I'll put it in the documentation, actually, or in the design doc, just for people to comment at least on it. Yeah, we'll go from there, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose it'll be technically awkward in the future if it gets split out and that like Netlify or whatever is pointed at the old repo and yeah. Also, you'll have Netlify kind of has like a repo scoped config. So if you want to use in repo config, then it's kind of like one to a repo. So that would mean that like Proud Docs would be the only docs for Test Pro.
Huh, okay.
So worth considering. You don't have to use in repo config, but then some you can only change things. Any of the things that you could have changed with the in repo config file can now only be changed by someone who has access to the graphical interface, which is restricted. So
Yeah, please feel free to maybe. I'm actually missing some parts of this because I haven't used that file before. But yeah, if you could just add a comment or two in there, and we can go from there. I actually have to run to the other meeting, so I gotta go. But thank you all for the comments.
thanks for coming, Linus.
Cool. Bye.
I think at some point I need to follow up with Eddie and Arnaud, but that may be, I don't know if we want to continue doing that now or.
This has been going on for almost a year now, as far as like the GCR proxy stuff. So yeah, hopefully we can wrap it up and take action on it at some point.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I am looking at that. Tim has said that, you know, this is one of the most pressing things. My team is super small at the moment. We have some other things, and also Aaron's out. But looks like I'll be able to focus on this. Clearly, there are some other approaches here that I need to catch up on.
But I mean, you can basically we can have a dedicated meeting for this. I'm kind of free after 10
Yeah,
a.m. EST.
yeah. Seems like it. Just that we had discussed this so much, and I don't think we have any other items. So we'll either call it, I think, or continue that conversation. Either is fine with me. I have this hour blocked in for this meeting, but and it doesn't look like we have any other items. But you know, since we also didn't have an agenda, I'm not expecting folks to stick around.
If you want to kill the recording, we can talk more openly about it.
Sure. I think we can end the like SIG testing meeting here and just sort of have our follow up on this topic. So thanks everyone for coming to SIG testing. Great awkward first meeting. We can shoot for a little more organized for the next one, and we'll move on to our just follow up conversation. And oh, I'm not actually sure if I can from the web client. Let me see if I can boot up the other one. I've been charging the laptop.
Do you know the host key? Because I can claim host and stop it.
I don't. I know how to sign into the SIG testing account from my one password. So, but I do actually have Zoom up on the other one. I just need to log in again. So it should just be a moment. Oh, or not. Oh, I think the password changed.
We can just all leave the meeting, and I think the meeting will end.
I think this is set up to auto record. We might just need to set up a different meeting.
Yep.
And I guess we'll need to trim this recording. Sorry, y'all.